Hello, bakers! Today we are here in the kitchen making my super easy brownie recipe. Okay, so the recipe is so inexpensive to make with or without icing. So let me explain. So the brownie recipe itself without any icing is approximately $2.50 to make for this batch. Again, it just depends on where you buy your groceries, if you get them on sale, and certain specifics. But let's say even if it's $3, that's very inexpensive, very budget friendly. Okay, so I did come up with a simple icing recipe for these brownies. I'm not going to use the icing recipe today because I'm just going to dust the brownies with powdered sugar. I might even make a little cocoa sugar to dust them with as well. I haven't decided yet, but let's just go with powdered sugar, okay? But if you want to make the icing, I will put the recipe for the icing also in the description, and you can make it. It's about 75 cents to make. Super affordable, right? It's just a half a cup of chocolate chips and 1 tablespoon of salted butter. Easy peasy. All right, so let's get started because I've been talking about making these brownies for days. So my family is ready to chow down. But before I get started, I want to talk about Modern Mountain Baking Company today because they sent me these products. And today I am going to be using their espresso powder in this recipe, which you can't see it, but it's right here. And I am going to adjust this recipe a little bit, and we are going to make espresso brownies. Yum, right? So I'm going to use espresso powder, and instead of vanilla extract, I am going to use Bite Club's coffee extract. And we're going to make delicious coffee brownies. But in addition to the espresso powder, Modern Mountain makes black cocoa, sparkling sugar, and a keto pizza crust. They have sent me all of these products and I'm excited to give them a try. So today we are trying the espresso powder. I was going to try the espresso powder and the black cocoa, but then I remembered, Deanna, your recipe calls for melted chocolate, not powder. So here we are. Okay, let's get started. Again, if you guys ever have any questions about any of my recipes or positive, happy comments, please leave them below. Okay. So I have preheated my oven to 350 degrees. I have lined an 8 by 11 baking sheet, and I use the word lined loosely with parchment paper, and it does help. If you're wondering why it's all wrinkly, because it does help it stay in a little bit better if you wrinkle it up first and then put it in. Otherwise, it completely pops out, although it still pops out. But once we got our brownie mixture in there, it will no longer pop out of the pan. All right, so I've got my mixer here with my attachment, and we are going to cream the butter and the, the sugars and the eggs. This one's a little bit different. I'm so used to creaming butter with sugar, but in this recipe, we cream the sugars with the eggs. And we've got 2 large eggs right here. I have got 3/4 of a cup of white sugar and 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar, which is packed brown sugar. All right, so we're going to cream the sugars and the eggs. I'm going to put the sugars in first. And then I went ahead and cracked my eggs into a cup. I never crack my eggs into the mix for obvious reasons. But 2 of the main reasons is because I don't want to get any eggshells in my baking, or if there's a bad egg, don't want to ruin everything with one bad egg. What do they say? One bad egg spoils the bunch. It's true. All right, so let's get that going. We're going to cream that together. I'm going to let that go, and we're going to kind of move on a little bit. So then we are going to melt our butter and our chips together, okay? So I've got 1/2 of a cup of a mixture of milk chocolate and semi-sweet chocolate chips. This particular batch happened to be mostly milk chocolate. And I've got 5 tablespoons of salted butter. So I'm gonna head on over to the microwave. I don't know why I cannot speak today. What is going on? Maybe it's the long weekend. Maybe I'm too rested. We're gonna melt that together for about 30 seconds to start. A little tip about chocolate chips for you, and you may already know this, maybe you don't, but chocolate chips keep their shape even when they're melted. So it's always good, okay, this looks really good. It's always good to melt them maybe in 15 to 30 second increments at a time and give it a stir. Because they may look like they're not melted, but once you stir them, they will be. It's very interesting. All right, so that was 30 seconds. My butter is not yet melted. It's nice and soft and it's starting to melt. But I'm gonna pop it back in there again for about 20 more seconds. It's looking good, actually. Let me stir it up a little bit. You guys can see that, I think. It's melting, but not quite melted yet. And rather than 20 seconds, I'm gonna go for 15. Little story for you. I am also a hairdresser, and I do hair only on Saturdays. And I was doing hair yesterday, and I have a white ceramic curling iron, and the entire curling iron is white. The barrel and the handle. So I went to move my curling iron so that my client wouldn't, hit into it or get burned or whatever. And I grabbed the wrong end. Yeah, that was not nice. So I've got burns on both my fingers. I have to say though, it's feeling better today than it did yesterday. So yay for that. All right, so we have melted the butter and the chips. We are now going to add our extract to this. Okay, I'm using coffee extract. Like I said, it's from Bite Club. Bite Club is on a temporary break, but the owner, Tony, makes all of his extracts himself. And he made this coffee extract for me out of Kona coffee beans. It is delicious. All right, so I've mixed my extract in with my melted chocolate. And now we're going to mix this melted chocolate in with our eggs. So I'm going to turn it back on, just a low speed. And we're going to pour it in slowly, but steady. Let's make sure we get every bit of delicious butter and chocolate in there because Deanna doesn't waste. All right, friends, that looks good. It looks deliciously chocolatey. It's a loose mixture right now until we add our flour. All right, looks good. Now I have 1 cup of flour here, and I have 1 tablespoon of the espresso powder, which smells delicious. So I'm actually going to just take that and pour it on. And we're going to, again, turn this on low speed and add this in slowly. Now, this recipe is very precise. So years ago, I used to teach online baking classes through Zoom, and I taught a class on this recipe. And one of my students decided that they wanted to add more chocolate to this recipe. So this student added extra melted chocolate, and it didn't bake up right. It took forever to bake, and then once it was done baking, the consistency was not right. So this recipe that I have come up with is very precise. So I highly recommend we stick to the recipe, even if you think you want it more chocolatey. Don't do it. Resist the urge. Okay, so here we go. It is time to now pour the batter into. Ooh, the batter into our prepared pan. So before I do that, you know what, let me just place that down for a moment. I'm gonna get a spatula. I'm gonna scrape down the beater, and then I'm gonna scrape down the sides of the pan and just make sure that everything is incorporated. Scraping is very important because sometimes not powdered sugar, but flour will get stuck at the bottom. The beater won't get it. And so we have to make sure that it's all incorporated before we pour it into the pan. All right, so clean that first. Okay. Oh, thanks. And now I'm going to just scrape all the sides down into the mixture first. And then I'm going to take my spatula and get all the way to the bottom and kind of like fold it up and over just to make sure there's no flour down there that hasn't been incorporated, and there does not appear to be, so yay. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour this in here. There we go. Oh, I see all those little bits of the espresso powder. This is gonna be delicious. So as you can see, the brownies are a lighter shade of brown. They're not super dark, but they are chocolatey when they're baked. And I think that's why my student decided she wanted to add a little bit more cocoa melted chocolate chips, because, you know, it is a light brown color, but I assure you, they do not lack in chocolate department. All right. Here we go. So I'm just going to take this and spread my batter evenly over the pan. You can use an 8x8 pan for this as well. If you want, you know, thicker brownies. I almost went with a 9x13, but I went in between instead. Just because I find that sometimes when I use an 8x8 pan, like the square pan, for some reason, the brownies just don't bake evenly all the way through as much as they do when I use a larger pan. All right, so here we go. Now, you know, you gotta have a taste. Oh, yum. I taste that espresso and that coffee. These are gonna be so good. Now, sometimes I will make this batter, and before I pour it into the pan, I will actually add some chocolate chips to it, some whole chocolate chips. This way, it adds a little bit of texture to the brownie when you bite into it when it's baked. You can actually bite into a chocolate chip. You can add chocolate chips, you can add nuts. I mean, really, the possibilities, what you can add to these to personalize them are endless. Okay, so my oven is ready and waiting for moi. So I am gonna put these in there. So using an 8x8 pan, you want to start checking after 55 minutes. Since I'm using a little bit of a larger pan, I am going to set my timer for 50 minutes, and then I'm going to give them a check at that point. I might even do 45, but I also know how my oven runs, and my oven does not run hot. So my oven takes a little bit longer to bake things, probably than the average oven. It's been like that for quite a while. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Perfect. And when we come back, I'm going to let you know how long they wound up baking, and we're going to take a look at these delicious brownies. Are you like me? Do you clean as you go? I hate having all the cleaning to do at the end. The brownies wound up baking for 55 minutes. I checked after 45 and they weren't done. Popped them in for 10 more minutes and they were absolutely perfect. I removed them from the baking dish and set them on top of my cutting board just to help them cool a little faster. Now I'm just going to take some powdered sugar and sift it over the top. I did go ahead and cut them because I wanted to see what they looked like on the inside, because I'm nosy like that. And I may have had a little itty bitty taste because there was a little left on the knife. But I am going to give you a nice up close view of the brownie. I'm just going to put it in my hand. Oh my. These They are the perfect mix between a cake brownie and an ooey gooey brownie. They are just moist and rich. I mean, wait till you see. Hang on. Look at that. Does that look delicious? It's absolutely perfect. And you can tell by the color of the brownie that what I was talking about earlier, how they're not like a dark brown, but I promise they do not lack in flavor. So I'm gonna give this a taste. I can't wait. Oh, wow, that's so good. And I can taste the espresso powder that I used in there. That's really good. See, these brownies to me are the perfect mix of, like I said, in texture, but also in sweetness. They're not over the top sweet, but they're not like, oh, these need icing either. Now, you could definitely put some icing on here, the one we talked about, or any icing if you have a favorite buttercream recipe, whatever it is. You can definitely put those on top of these and it will be absolutely delish. But eating them like this with just a sprinkling of powdered sugar to me is absolutely perfect. All right, friends, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned because after this segment, I have another segment where I talk about questions that you may have pertaining to this recipe and I give you the answers. So stay tuned and don't leave. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Hello again, bakers. I am here to answer a few questions that you may have about the recipe that I've shared in the video today. So you might be thinking, Deanna, can I increase this recipe to make more brownies? Yes, you definitely can. However, adjustments will probably need to be made in the recipe, and those adjustments may include increasing your mixing times, using different baking pans, and if you use a larger or a smaller baking pan than what we use today, your bake time may increase or decrease. Would unsalted butter be better to use in this recipe? Well, I think this is a controversial answer. My answer is no, because in my opinion, using salted butter works great with sweet dessert recipes because it counteracts the sweetness of the recipe so that the dessert recipe isn't overly sweet because not enough salt has been added. Now, yes, you can use unsalted butter and add salt, but for me, I prefer to use salted butter in my baking recipes. Now, if you are used to using unsalted butter in your recipes and you're going to switch to using salted butter, and the recipe originally calls for adding salt, you probably need to adjust the amount of salt that you're adding to the recipe if you're using salted butter. So for instance, with this brownie recipe, the recipe calls for salted butter, but a pinch of salt, which I did still add to the recipe. Part of that is because I put this recipe together myself, and I know a little pinch of salt isn't going to hurt. Okay, so is the baking time for this recipe accurate for convection ovens versus your traditional standard oven? No. Okay, so if you are going to use a convection oven, your recipes, your desserts are going to bake faster because of the air circulation. So what I would recommend doing is reducing the baking temperature of this recipe to 325 degrees if you're using a convection oven, as opposed to the 350 degrees that we're using in a standard oven, and start checking the brownies at the 40-minute mark. You might, if you know your oven and you know, okay, I've made brownies before in my oven, Deanna, and they've taken 30 minutes, then please check your brownies after 30 minutes. I'm always one to err on the side of safety and start checking earlier, just in case, because nobody likes an overcooked brownie, right? So if you're new to baking and you may be thinking, okay, Deanna, how do I check my brownie to see if it's done? Well, you can use a cake tester, a toothpick or knife, and insert it into the center of the baking dish and pull it out. And when you pull it out, if the brownie is done, it's going to have little bits of baked brownie on your tester as opposed to gooey batter. If you pull your tester out, whatever it is that you're using, and it's full of gooey batter, those brownies are not done and they need to go back in. Okay, last question you might have about this recipe. What is the shelf life of these brownies? Okay, so these brownies actually have a decent shelf life. I would say they would last anywhere from 3 to 5 days at room temperature in an airtight container. You can absolutely store them in the refrigerator as well if you prefer your brownies chilled, or if you want to make sure that they last the 4 to 5 days, up to 45 days. Although I have to say, when I make these brownies, they just don't last that long because everyone eats them. So these brownies actually stay moist because of the brown sugar and the butter content in the recipe. So I hope if you guys had any questions pertaining to this recipe that I've answered them for you. And we're going to be back again soon with more delicious budget-friendly recipes. If you haven't yet, I ask that you please subscribe to my channel and like this video. It's a free way to support your creators. All right, friends, happy baking, and we'll be back soon. Here are a few photos from our baking adventures today. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe and like the video.